So, good afternoon and welcome to NASDAQ's webinar for June. Today's webinar is titled Effective Strategies to Show Off Your Work. I'm Gail Cormier, the Project Director of NASDAQ, the Family Center of Excellence. This presentation will share information on communicating the importance of our work. How do we do that for our funders, agency leaders, peers, and community members? Sometimes we have a hard time bragging about how our work is and what we've done. This is going to help us get a little skills in that area. This session will help participants think about how they share their work with others, why that matters, and how to create messages that connect with different people. The session will include opportunities to work together in breakout groups, share ideas, and learn from each other. Before we get started on the presentation today, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. Next slide, please. Today's webinar is being recorded. The recording, along with the PowerPoint presentation, slides, and any additional resources will be uploaded on our events page and after the presentation. Here is our disclaimer from SAMHSA. All attendees will be muted for the presentation portion for today's webinar. However, we still look forward to hearing your questions, and we're happy to help you with any technical issue. So just ask or request technical assistance. Please send a message in the chat box. We'll be watching the chat during the entire presentation, and we're here to help you. If time allows, we will unmute, and you will have the opportunity to ask questions. You can use the raise your hand button. That always makes life easier. When you leave the webinar today, you'll be redirected to complete a short feedback survey using the link provided. This survey will help us continuously improve our webinars, and it also fulfills our SAMHSA funding obligation to provide them with important data required by our grant. Please note, all information will be confidential, and we will respect your privacy. We do not offer CEU credits for our webinars, but you will receive a certificate of attendance immediately after you fill out the survey. I would like to thank SAMHSA for allowing us to share this information with you today. And next slide, please. At NASDAQ, we always use family-driven language. We're trauma responsive. We're strengths-based. We avoid blaming caregivers. We're community-driven. We use person-first language. We're always respectful, non-judgmental, and consistent with our actions. With that, next slide. It is now my honor to turn this webinar over to our presenters from the Southwestern Plains Center for Mental Health Implementation Support. I'll let them introduce themselves, and they can tell you a little bit more about themselves and about the Mental Health Implementation Support Center.
Thanks, Gail. I know that's a mouthful for sure. But hi, everyone, and welcome. We are so grateful that you are here with us today. My name is Kendall Jones, and I'm joined by an incredible team who will also be presenting. We have Dr. Molly Lopez, Jesse Davis, and Victoria Kelly. And together we make up a part of the team for the Southwestern Plains Hub at the Center for Mental Health Implementation Support. Today, we're focusing on how to communicate your work in a way that it's honest, powerful, and true to you. So we'll keep it practical and supportive using tools that you can apply right away. And we would love for you to join the conversation in the chat as we go. So let's start with the big picture. Why does communication even matter? It's easy to think of communication as something extra, something like an add-on that we do after the quote unquote real work. But the truth is communications is the real work, and it shapes how people see you, trust you, and decide whether or not to engage with what you're offering. I mean, have you ever seen a flyer and immediately felt like, maybe that's just not for me? Maybe the tone was too clinical, or maybe it was full of jargon. It probably just did not reflect your reality. Now, flip that and think about a message that made you feel invited or seen and supported. And it probably felt actually human, which is so rare these days. And it probably felt clear and respectful. And that's the kind of communication we're aiming for. And when we get it right, we build trust. And you'll hear the word trust a lot in our presentations because trust is so big in communication world. So long story short, it's how we move people from I've never heard of that to I want to be a part of that. And to create strategy effectively, planning is essential. You wouldn't build a house without a blueprint. Same thing for communications. A well-structured communication plan provides clarity and focus without the need to be overly elaborate. And here's an example of how we like to break it down. So, your first step is to identify your goal, and it's important to identify a specific object or objective. Are you wanting to boost participation in a support group, or maybe raise awareness about a new program or initiative, or possibly reduce stigma around seeking help? Selecting a clear goal is the first step that this whole plan will revolve around. Secondly, you want to identify your audience. Understanding who you are trying to reach is so important. And it's important to also be specific about your target groups, whether they are youth, caregivers, faith leaders, school counselors. Each group has distinct needs and motivations. And part of identifying your audience is learning barriers and benefits. And we will dive deeper into this as the slides progress. But to simplify it, barriers are what obstacle does your audience face, and benefits are what's important to them and what they'll get out of engaging with you. This information will help you create those key messages that really resonate and connect with your audience. After that, we're choosing your channels. So, what's the best way to reach them? It could be social media, or it could be flyers at a local clinic. Maybe it's just texting or having a conversation face to face. Think about what's realistic for you and also accessible for your audience. Um, Having a simple plan helps you stay proactive instead of reactive. So it will save you time and keep your message clear, which will help you build more trust with the people that you are trying to support. On our next slide, we show a real world example, and we have used Hope Squad. And I'm sure a lot of y'all know what Hope Squad is, but if you don't, Hope Squad is a peer-to-peer suicide prevention initiative used in schools. Students are trained to recognize signs of distress in their classmates and connect them to trusted adults. This model works because it builds on relationships, and so does its communication strategy. So here's how it looks through the communication strategy. What is the goal? Well, the goal here is to boost student well-being and reduce the stigma around talking about suicide. Who are we trying to reach? They were trying to reach high schoolers and teachers and advisors who support them. What were their barriers? Well, a big one was fear. Students worried about being judged, and some didn't know who to talk to. And then there was just a general lack of trust in the system. What are some of the benefits that they wanted? They wanted to feel empowered. They wanted to be able to help a friend and knowing that they're not alone. So, taking all of this information, they created a key message. And the key message really, you are not alone. So, we're already talking about that benefit. You are not alone. Hope Squad empowers you to connect, support, and take action. And they shared that message everywhere. So the channels they used were through school assemblies, posters in the hallways, classroom presentations, and even social media that was managed by the school. They also tracked how many students were making referrals and used surveys to measure the level of comfort with help seeking. So this communication was intentional, it was layered, but most importantly, it was rooted in the real needs of this community. And that's what we mean by values-based and intentional communication. referring back to the first slide. It's not extra, it's part of the work. All right, so Hope Squad is a great example of a program that didn't just show up with good intentions. They built trust by being intentional with every message. And that kind of consistency doesn't just happen by accident, which brings us to the next piece, which is brand value. I know when people first hear brand value, they assume, oh, we're talking about logos or taglines. But brand value is more than that. Your brand is your reputation, and it's what people believe about you or your organization based on how they experience you. And your brand is being shaped every single day, whether you are paying attention to it or not. If someone emails your team or you and they get a kind, thoughtful, respectful reply, that can build trust. But if someone hears about your program through word of mouth and the message is inconsistent or even unclear, that will affect perception and could ultimately lead that person from not engaging with you. And so every post, every flyer, every conversation is building or shaping your brand. And strong brand value doesn't just come from saying we're trustworthy. It actually comes from consistency and showing up in ways that actually feel trustworthy. So now that we've talked about what people believe about you, your brand value, let's flip that around and ask, what do you believe or assume about your audience? Because if we want our communication to connect, we can't just think about how we're being perceived. We also have to understand the people we're trying to reach, right? Their values and their fears and even their lived experience. So, understanding your audience is one of the most important and most human steps in any communication plan. Understanding your audience is the foundation of good communication. If we don't know what someone cares about or what worries them or what they value, we might miss the mark completely, even if we had the best intentions. So think about it in your work. Maybe you're supporting a grandparent caring for a child or a teen navigating their first mental health diagnosis. Each of these people, they're living in totally different contexts and they'll need something different from your message. And that's how, think of how powerful it is when you get a message that feels like it was made just for you. You're going to pause and you're going to listen. And maybe that message is even going to make you feel more hopeful and open. And that's what we're going for here. And this is all to say this doesn't mean you have to write 100 versions of every message, but it does mean taking time to center your audience. Because when your message reflects that understanding, people feel seen and builds that, our favorite word, trust. So now let's take it one step further. Not everyone in your audience is starting from the same place. Some people may have never heard of your work before. Others might be curious, like, oh, I've seen your post. I've heard about that group, but I'm just not sure that it's for me yet. And then you've got people who are already involved. They show up to the events, they share their resources, and maybe even send others your way. And finally, there are your co-creators, the ones who are really in it with you. And these are the people that help shape what this work looks like. Knowing where someone is helps you figure out what kind of message actually makes sense for them. Like if someone's new, maybe they just need a simple intro, who you are, what you do, and how you can support them. But if someone's already engaged, maybe now is the time to say like, hey, do you want to collaborate or help us build on what's next? The key thing here is to ask, and asking can be scary, but it actually works. Does this message meet someone where they are, or am I assuming they already know the whole story? On our next slide, I would like to introduce you to Angela and Mark. So we've created these personas as a way of stepping into someone else's shoes. This helps get into the mindset of your audience and better understand how to communicate with them. And this exercise is just pretty fun. So let's take Angela. She's a parent advocate. She's lived through the system and she's highly engaged in the work, but she's skeptical of that jargony language. If she hears something that sounds too institutionalized, she'll tune out. So Angela needs messages that are clear, respectful, and actionable. She wants to know what this means for her family and how her voice can be part of the process. Now, flipping it over to Mark. Mark works at a state agency. His inbox is filled, so he doesn't have time to read a 3-page email. What he needs is something short and to the point. He needs something that shows outcomes and why your work is worth his attention. By creating personas like Angela and Mark, you can write messages that speak to their reality. It doesn't just help you sound better, but it makes people think that you are speaking to them, which is so important. So this approach can even make that basic flyer feel just more personal. It's really about connecting to them, not just talking at them. All right, so fun part. Let's take a moment to reflect, and if you're comfortable, we'd love for you to share in the chat. Think of one group you're trying to reach in your work. It could be families, youth, system partners, whoever feels most relevant to what you're doing right now. What is one thing that group really cares about? Not what you wish they cared about, but what actually drives them. So go ahead and drop your thoughts in the chat. And it can just be something simple like youth feeling heard. And I'll start to read them out loud as we go along. Youth, what's in it for me? Yes, absolutely. Getting their youth connected to the most appropriate service. I think that is so important. Rural communities members having access to resources. Yes, that actually comes up quite a bit. Dads, concrete resources and feeling heard. That's awesome. Families, connect undocumented families to services, and that is especially important. Families who want quality special ed services. Yes. So, what I love about these responses and keep them coming is that they remind us the people we're trying to reach are already caring a lot and they have values, needs, and hopes just like we do. Um, and when we understand them, our message stops being just, a list of services and kind of starts feeling more like an invitation. Um, so thank you. We can move on over to our next slide. So I'm sure we've all seen some aspect of the iceberg. I really love it. I think it's pretty insightful when we're trying to connect with someone. We often only notice what's right in front of us, like their job title, age, or role. And while if you want to click through, there's some animation. But there's so much more going on beneath the surface that matters, such as their beliefs, motivations, past experiences, and even their level of trust. For example, you might see a parent who seems disengaged, but what if they're not disengaged? What if they just felt overlooked or dismissed in the past? Or they could be dealing with challenges like transportation issues or mental health stigma that we just don't see. When we interact with someone only by labeling them as just a parent or a provider, we miss the deeper context that shapes their perspective. And that's when our messages can fall flat or even increase those feelings of disconnection. When you acknowledge the entire iceberg, you can spark these meaningful conversations that that help people in your audience feel engaged. All right, so now it's time to get a little bit strategic. Audience mapping is a tool that helps you prioritize your communication. Because we know you can't reach everyone equally, we all have limited time and energy, so audience mapping helps you focus on where your efforts will matter most. And here's how it works. You want to think about these two things. First, how much influence does this group or person have? Second, and how interested are they in what you are doing? Are they already invested or do they need more context first? So try visualizing this on a grid, placing your audiences across the axis of interest and influence, and you'll start to see where your energy should go first. And that can help bring clarity to your communication plan. This tool helps you become more intentional. So we're not just throwing spaghetti at a wall and, hoping that it sticks. You're wanting to build real relationships with the people who can move your work forward and also support your goals. So on our next slide, I'll give you an example of how this works, but let's take a breath, because this slide is kind of where it all comes together. So we've got limited time and energy. Audience mapping helps you figure out who to talk to first and how to talk to them. If your audience is highly interested and highly influential, maybe a key family organization or a local school counselor, you'll want to give them a more personalized communication and maybe even a seat at that planning table. But I do want to make clear that mapping is not about excluding people. It's about meeting people where they are with what you've got. So it gives you that roadmap for building relationships intentionally rather than trying to reach everyone in the same way. So as we carry on through this presentation, just keep in mind, like, who do I need to build with directly? Who do I need to inform regularly? And who might need a little more trust building before they engage? And I would like to pass the baton to Dr. Molly Lopez, who will talk about barriers and benefits and creating that perfect message for your audience.
Thank you, Kendall. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit more to this concept of audience that Kendall introduced. So a part of getting to know your audience, as we mentioned, is really about understanding why they might act in a particular way and why they might not act in that way. So if I, for example, want to have state leaders invest more in the types of support that my organization provides, I need to understand what the barriers are to their doing that step, to their investing in my services. I also need to understand what would be the benefits to their investing more. Barriers tend to fall into two groups. So as we think about kind of this idea of barriers, there are barriers that are structural. So those are things that are going to get in the way related to kind of the structure, policies, things like that. So for example, my state leader may have the vast majority of their budget already allocated, right? That's a structural barrier related to their investment. But there are also barriers that are related to their knowledge, their beliefs, attitudes, and motivations of the audience. So let's think a little bit about benefits. Remember, when you're thinking about benefits, it's important to think about what the audience values, which may not actually be the same thing as what you value. So even though we might all believe very strongly in the value of, let's say, family voice really shaping systems, we need to step back a little bit and think what's important to our audience and how do we meet them where they're at and tailor our messages. So tailoring your message is really about shaping it to address the barriers for the audience to move in the way that you would like, and also the benefits to that audience. So how does that help us meet the goals? Well, it helps us build trust and connection with the audience. When you show people that you understand what they're going through, as Kendall has talked about, they're more likely to feel like they're seen, they're heard, and they're respected. That's going to help build trust. If we come back to our example of communicating with state leaders to really invest in our services, it's about recognizing that they are making difficult decisions about funding and identifying ways that the supports that you're offering can help provide a unique benefit to them. All right. Let's look for a minute at just a few examples of some barriers. So there's a few barriers up here around different actions that we may be interested in. I want you all to take a second, and in the chat, I want you to think about some of the barriers that feel most relevant to your audience. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to think about that and then drop that into the chat. What do you think might be a barrier to your audience acting in a way that would support your goals? Time constraints, system distrust, yes. Definitely seeing time and distrust. Maybe not having the information, access to technology, limited resources, especially in rural areas. Yes. Preconceived notions. We all have things that we may bring to an understanding of something that may not actually be accurate. Okay, lack of available resources. Awesome. Stigma, financial struggles, difficulty with funding, limited access. Yeah. Oh, really good, really good. We're seeing that, there's some overlap, but also a lot of variability, right? In the different things people may be thinking about for their audience. Okay, let's turn and think about the right-hand side of our chart. Here's a few potential benefits that might be important to your audience. But think for a minute and put into the chat for your audience, what do you think some of the benefits might be for them engaging in the way that you're hoping? They might feel renewed hope. They have somebody who they can talk to that really gets it, that understands them. They might have an option for more voice and more choice in the systems and the services. They have more knowledge of how to access care. It can be pretty complicated. A greater confidence and feeling of empowerment, feeling more that sense of inclusivity, making a positive difference for family, for others, for the community, feeling that sense of empowerment, inspiration, some dittos. I love that. Improved family functioning, having more fun as a family, feeling like their family's stronger, providing self-care, taking care of ourselves, feeling understood, positive experiences navigating the system. Yeah, great ideas for benefits. Okay, so we talked about like there's many different audiences that we may care about, right? And they have different barriers and benefits. We've got some ideas already, right? We're not starting from scratch. We know a little bit about our audience. So think about some of the ways that you can draw that information from your audiences to understand the barriers and benefits a little bit better. You probably have regular conversations with folks who are a part of your audience, and you can listen for those structural barriers and also the beliefs and the attitudes and the motivation and the understanding and knowledge that may be centered around the issue that you're interested in. You can listen for those things. You also have information that may come in from emails that you send and comments that people make. You can ask questions on your social media channels. Get people to engage with you around some of the questions you have so you understand their knowledge, attitudes, what they value more closely. Understand what they engage with. in your communications and what they maybe don't engage with so much. How do you take that information and understand what's important to your audience in that way? When you're at events, how do they engage in those events so that you can understand what's important? So all of that to say, you've got experience that you can draw from to help understand your audience. You can think about what patterns you're noticing, who shows up, who doesn't, who's engaged, who's not, what concerns are they bringing, what hesitations are they bringing, what is exciting them and engaging them, what makes them hopeful. That information is going to be really valuable for you. Remember that one of the tools you can use as a part of this process is to develop some of those personas, to think about who are the different types of people in my audience, in my community that I want to think about. And I can start to identify what I think are some of the common barriers, some of the common benefits that they might experience as a way of starting to identify my messages. All right. But I also might recognize that I don't know everything about my audience, right? Who are the folks that are important who maybe you're not engaging? Maybe I don't have as much information about them as I want to do. So there are other things I can do to do my research to really understand some of the barriers and benefits from my audience. I can start to do things like maybe I might ask some questions in a survey. You can do a complete survey, but you can also think about how do I ask a question or two in a survey that I might already be doing to understand my audience a little bit better. Maybe I'm doing a training and I've got a chance at the end in my evaluation to also ask people a question or two that helps me understand what their barriers are and what their benefits are. For example, maybe a training like this as a part of the evaluation might ask, what are you most interested in hearing about? What might be your biggest concern that you'd like to see addressed in a training? Or what time of day is most appropriate for a training? Or how long do you think a training might be? Those are all things that can help understand an audience a little bit better. And you can think about kind of how you put those into surveys. You can also do focus groups. You can have interviews. You can take some time over, for example, a social media time to listen and ask questions of audience. You can have conversations with folks specifically around trying to understand your audience a little bit better. So some of the things that you might want to think about as you're doing some of this research is having better insight. We've talked a little bit about that. What do people believe? What do they maybe misunderstand? What are they maybe worried about or concerned about? You can also test your messaging through things like understanding what words are clear and engaging and what words maybe put people off or feel a little bit jargony or a little bit hard to understand. You can also ask questions about what channels people prefer. Where do they hang out? Where are they gathering their information? What are their trusted resources for information? All of that can be very helpful. What if I told you I was interested in engaging youth leaders on an advisory board? And so as a part of that, I was going to release an application on Facebook. Would you think that I knew my audience? I'm guessing you would probably think she doesn't really know how to get to her audience, right? Because young people tend to not be on Facebook very much, right? I haven't done my research. I don't know my best channels to get to my audience. All right, but let's say we've got a lot of good information. How are we using this information in order to tailor our message? Well, we're tailoring our message around the barriers and benefits. So think about it. I know my barriers. There's a few examples up there. I also know what my audience can benefit from my services support, let's say. I can use those two pieces to craft my message. So I'm going to jump back for a second to our example with the state leader, who I am hoping will invest in the types of services that I have to offer. I might recognize, as I said, that they have limited funding, right? That's a barrier that they have in place, but also that they are worried about and they are concerned about and they value being very effective and efficient in the services that they can provide. So I might structure a message that says, I know you have limited funding to use for new services, but our Family Navigator program can get the right families to the right services, saving time and money. See, I recognize kind of where they're at, lead them to how I can help around the values that are important to them. All right, so a couple of other thoughts about messaging. As you're thinking about creating messages that are going to be speaking to your audience, you want to think about a few different things. You want to think about what is their level of awareness, right? Kendall sort of mentioned that level of engagement. Do they know who you are? Do they need to have some understanding of that as a part of the messaging? You also want to think about the desired outcomes. What do they care about? And how are you going to help meet that need? And then you also want to think about the emotional landscape, kind of what's the context in which this conversation or messaging is happening? Are they likely to feel frustrated? Are they likely to feel overwhelmed? Are they perhaps hopeful? Are they excited about new opportunities? Those will all influence how you shape your message and whether or not that message lands. So moving from the insight, the knowledge that we have to a really strong message and how we deliver that message. Okay, so we have gone through a lot of information so far. We're going to stop for a second. I'm going to pass over to Jessie, who's going to give us a chance to practice some of this.
Thanks, Molly. So I heard that you all like doing activities, and so we're going to do an activity. We're going to break you into breakout rooms. You're going to have about 15 minutes. And if we can go to the next slide. You are going to be tasked with your group to create a 1 to 2 sentence message as to why someone should eat a specific fruit. Now, don't take too long deciding on your fruit, but I'll let you decide your fruit. You're going to have a leader in your breakout room as well to help guide you through this conversation. And we have steps to help you navigate this conversation as well. We are hoping that when you come back, we'll be able to hear a compelling message for your fruit. I am also very interested in what fruits you choose. So, like I mentioned, you're going to have a leader in your breakout room. You're going to have about 15 minutes with your group to discuss what fruit and the message that you want to utilize. And then you're going to come back and we're going to do a little bit of a debrief. And there is still more content after this. So please don't just hop out. If you don't want to participate, the groups will probably be large enough where you can hang out, but I think you'll have more fun if you do participate. Do we have any questions before I send you out? All right. I see no questions yet. If you need assistance, please let me know. I have the breakout rooms all set up. It should automatically whisk you away to your breakout room. At the end, it will come give you a pop-up of a 60-second warning, so you can stay in throughout the entire 60 seconds, but at the end, it will whisk you back to the main room as well. Are we ready, leaders? All right, have fun. All right. So, are we ready to go through our debrief of what you all came up with? Yeah? Awesome. So, I'm sharing our screen and I will ask the leader of each group to just quickly share out what your group came up with. We've got about a minute per group. So, group number 2, will you share with us what you got?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jesse. I have to first say that we had a terrific group. And then what was really super awesome about our group is that we had the blackberries that we chose. We had Cheryl, who does not even like blackberries at all, had all these like great things to say about blackberries, even though she doesn't like to eat them. Okay, so we chose blackberries. Our audience then were students kind of K through 12, and then folks, students that were like health conscious. We really wanted to focus on a fruit that had low sugar content, that was really focused on being preventative for like health issues, and then really being focused on wellness and like health awareness, as well as the fruit being really flexible. Like you can eat it in lots of different ways, like in smoothies and with yogurt and lots of different dishes. And so we got a chance to start working on our message, and we started with like, for a snack that's convenient, healthy, and delicious, give blackberries a try. They're great on yogurt, cereal, and they'll help you live longer. We then shifted to like, well, maybe we can make it even more engaging, like saying, like asking like a trivia question, saying something like, do you know that blackberries are like superfoods that can make you healthy? And then include more information about how awesome blackberries are, like try them on yogurt, cereal, etc. But that's what we did. That was what our group 2 came up with.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, group number 3.
I think that's us, and we had such a fun group. We chose the pawpaw, and it's a very forgotten fruit. It's native to North America. It's the largest edible fruit native to North America, mostly in the eastern portion of it. So our audience, school cafeteria workers in the eastern part of the United States, because when we started to talk about it, we were like, oh, the barriers, the accessibility, the lack of accessibility is there. Of course, it has tons of vitamins. It's a healthy choice. It's pretty historical. There's a huge historical background of it. The flavor is great. It takes flavors from a whole bunch of different fruits. But we did go into barriers, lack of accessibility, and short shelf life, easy bruising. Some of our messages were support local with this native fruit that has multiple flavors. It's a healthy alternative to your child's favorite treat because you can make ice cream with it, and it's supposedly really good. The pawpaw creates more jobs and introduces children to another healthy option, which can also be used to make ice cream. And then we talked about ways to share this message, and I think one of the main ways was to create like an educational packet of the pawpaw because it is not well known, and the more people who know about it will likely want to try it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That sounds like a fun group. All right, group number 4.
Okay, I actually think we had the best group. So we'll battle it out, but our fruit was peaches, and our audience that we're going to target is teenagers who we think are probably anti-fruiters. And so we had a lot of values, but some of the things that came up were kind of improving your skincare regimen, reducing acne. It can help with your hair care as well. It can make you overall healthier. You can share them with friends, smells good, can help with aromatherapy. It's cool. The Kardashians eat them, it's popular. You can eat them in lots of different ways, very flexible. And so we had some great discussions around messaging. I think probably one of the winners was a peach a day keeps acne away as one of our options. And then we also had healthy hair and skin starts with eating peaches. And then either peaches more than a selfie or from selfie to peachy. Depending probably on our strategy. We actually talked as well about some strategies as a part of the discussion and talked about sharing the messaging through Snapchat and TikTok. We talked about the opportunity to use like skin influencers, skincare, makeup influencers on YouTube. We talked about giving free samples so folks would have opportunity to taste it. And we decided we were going to create a peachy movement.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All right, we've got just a few left. Group number 5. And as we've got the last few groups sharing, if y'all who weren't group leaders want to share about your experience and your thoughts in the chat, I would love to read them as well. But group number 5, would you share with us?
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. We had a great group and I learned a lot from this process. When we were picking our fruit, we selected watermelon and I missed in the chat that someone had suggested peaches. So I think it's really important, I mean, kind of giving us that, getting back to making sure that we're hearing from everyone and getting everyone engaged in the work. So totally missed that in the chat and Melody brought it to my attention after the fact. So I really appreciate that. So when we were thinking about who our audience was, we were thinking families who need to drink more water and keep cool in the summer. We also recognize that there are other audiences, we didn't include that here, but other audiences where watermelon might not be a healthy fruit. So like we would want to tailor messages for them. But thinking families who need to drink more water and keep cool in the summer. And our value for this watermelon was refreshing hydration. The compelling message that we came up with was want to have fun and stay hydrated without a glass. Spring into the season with refreshing watermelon. And then Artie suggested another cute tagline, and if you don't have teeth, it's easy to eat. So like lots of different messages that we could come up with that. And then just thinking about reflecting on the message to ensure our chosen values shine through. We think we did that, but we'd probably do some more tweaking if we had more time. But had fun doing this. Thank you all so much for participating in it.
Of course, I'm trying to talk while I'm muted. Thank you. Group number 6.
Alrighty, so we went with oranges, and our audience was busy parents. And so we looked at the nutritional value of oranges. It has a lot of vitamin C, and then it's also a really quick snack. And so we really focused on pre-sliced oranges to make it accessible for people and easier. And we went with the compelling message of juggling work, kids, life, and limited time. Peel an orange is the perfect nutritious snack and perfect way to boost your child's immune system and keep them going strong all day. So we really tried to fit all our values into that message. And then we took it a step further and thought of some barriers, which might be access. So we would want to partner with some local vendors in the area and connect those parents to further help access to the oranges. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Thank you. And last but not least, group number 7. Would y'all share with us?
Absolutely. So we hope we didn't cheat, but we went with fruit salad because we had a lot of different fruits in the chat. So instead of choosing just one, we put them all together. And we had a great suggestion for the audience being parents participating in a parenting group, perhaps focused on childhood nutrition. We came up with so many values. Nutritious, affordable, natural, connects to childhood, superfoods, activity-based, brings the family together. You can make connections not only with the family, but also with farmers or people in farmers markets. It's healthy, colorful. It's a storytelling opportunity, portable, so you can take it to multiple environments to enjoy it. It's low maintenance. There's a connection to nature. If you go to the farm and actually pick some of the fruits, it can be an educational experience, build community. It's a flexible salad because you can put different fruits in it, and it can help overcome differences if you talk about family members' different preferences and substituting different fruits. Our compelling message was bring your family. Oh, it didn't refresh. We actually edited it. It's fruit salad. It brings your family together with a refreshing, healthy, colorful treat to connect with each other, the community, and nature. There's something special for everyone. Our reflection process was mostly focused on trying to bring a very long set of 2 sentences down to something a little shorter so that we could be effective in our messaging.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And I am just about out of time for my own activity with you all, but I do want to ask if you would share in the chat which one of these fruits do you think you would choose based on these messages. We have blackberries, pawpaw, peaches, watermelon, oranges, and fruit salad. While you're typing that in the chat, I'm going to pass it off to Tori. Thank you so much.
I just want to say, I was hoping somebody would say tomatoes.
Hot debate.
I almost did. But I get yelled at too many times, and the same thing with cucumbers, because those are a fruit too. They're actually a watermelon.
It was so much fun. But I guess we have to get back to talking about brand value. But we'll get back to fruit, don't worry. So we talked earlier about brand value based on the interactions that people had with your work. And now we want to go a little deeper to explore organizational brand value and personal brand value. So organizational brand value is the impression people have of your organization. When families or community partners hear your organization's name, what comes to mind? Personal brand value, on the other hand, is about you. Your voice, your lived experience, the way you show up in conversations, emails, and meetings. So what do people remember after they've talked to you? Something you can do to think about this is to create a values lens checklist. So before you hit send on a message or you finalize a slide deck, ask, does this reflect our values? Does the tone sound like us? And are the images and language real, respectful, and inclusive? Those small intentional moments are what create genuine trust, as we've mentioned, and integrity over time. Next slide, please. So now the next step is to make sure that people can actually feel those values in your messaging. So it's not about telling people what you offer, it's about showing what you believe in. And for the families and communities you support, values like dignity, agency, and belonging really matter. You don't have to say those exact words out loud, but your message sure reflects them in a way that feels real and grounded. Let's take a simple line like, we offer services to families. Like that's what you do, but that sounds kind of generic. So try this instead. We make sure families lead the way in shaping support. It's saying the same thing, but the second version feels more respectful. It centers families. It says, you matter, your voice leads this work. Also, keep in mind when you're writing or speaking to a parent or caregiver, you don't want to sound like a robot or an informational pamphlet. You want your message to sound like you, like someone who's been there. So in the end, it's not people that are connecting with programs. They want to connect with people. Your voice, your values, that's what makes the difference. Next slide, please. So let's just pause and think about what really drives us in the work that we do. So if you could focus on one value in your messaging, what word is the most important to you? Would that be trust, empowerment, belonging? I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to just think about that and then drop that in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing safe, trust, non-judgmental, community. Honesty, transparency, able, nourish, compassion, choices, relevant. These are great. And as you're kind of thinking about this, notice the first word that popped into your mind. That instinct is usually closer to the truth than a polished poster in your office with a bunch of words on it. It's the value that you're thinking of. And also remember that that is the word that you're asking your audience to kind of judge you by. So if your word is maybe transparency, if you're leaving unanswered emails, those chip away at your goals. Ooh, I'm so sorry, someone has a tornado warning. Be safe. Okay, so now let's talk about choosing the right channels. So when you're thinking about channels and the message you're sharing, know that a message lives or dies by the placement. So if you're posting a really heartfelt story of your experience in the wrong platform, it's like hanging art in a closet. It's technically displayed, but it's practically invisible. So just realize that effective communication isn't broadcasting your message. Earlier, we talked about researching your audience. So just continue to think about your audience. Do you know if they're more on Facebook or LinkedIn? Do they read the local paper? Do they trust local leaders? You also want to think about behavior. If caregivers tell us that they scroll Facebook at 10 p.m. after the kids are asleep, then schedule your posts around then. If young adults are scrolling short form videos on a commute, then think about sharing Reels or TikToks. It's really not that hard, I promise you, if you haven't done it before. And policy staff, they probably skim newsletters at 7 a.m. before they hop on a meeting. So, and also last thing is don't underestimate traditional media and word of mouth like church bulletin boards, PTA meetings, local newspapers, things like that. In many communities, those are still the best ways to reach your audience. And we'll keep emphasizing this, but meet people where they are and not where we'd like them to be. So let's talk about social media data. Many of us use social media, but are you using it effectively? If you're kind of wondering, where should I share this message? It depends on who you're trying to reach. Different platforms have different tones and different audiences. We talked earlier in our slides about where your audience is spending their time. So we'll take a look at the data on those platforms and kind of see what works best. So Facebook is still a really strong choice for community groups and caregivers. It works well for event announcements, longer stories, and resource sharing. A lot of family leaders use Facebook to stay connected and informed. Instagram, we know, is more visual and it tends to reach a younger audience. So it's really great for storytelling through photos, quick videos, and sharing real life moments. LinkedIn is going to be more professional. So you want to share wins, partnerships, and systems level work there. And then on TikTok, it is younger adults and youth. So if you're trying to connect to authentic, peer-driven content, that's a platform that's fast, emotional, and informal. And X is primarily used by journalists, advocates, and policy folks. It's great for real-time updates, reactions to current events, or joining larger conversations. Those are a lot of platforms, and you don't need to be on all of them. Just focus on 2 that will help you reach the right people in the right way. So now events and conferences are a great way to connect with people and get your message to people in person. You don't need a huge budget or anything fancy. You just need to be clear and prepared. So again, the question is to ask yourself, what do you want people to remember about us? Using that idea, create one sentence that's simple and conversational, and be prepared to share that in your one-on-one conversations. And a great tool that you can use at these events is QR codes. And you want to try to link that to one thing. So whether that's a newsletter or social media or key resources, have that as QR code and make sure you're sharing that at your booth or whatever you're using, maybe pamphlets or just print it out somewhere. We can continue on to the next slide, please. So let's pause and think about what we've built so far. Earlier, you named your values. So with that in mind, I'd like for you to think about 2 places where you would share that. So maybe that's social media, maybe that's with a policymaker, or maybe you would contact the radio to share that. So just let me know in the chat. I'll give you a few minutes to think about that. And you can let us know what 2 channels you would like to share that message on. And I love to see in the chat, some of you are on TikTok and things. You're staying in tune and listening to your audience. That's great. So we'll share it on Facebook, LinkedIn, School email blasts, those are all really great places to share. Reels, YouTube Shorts are great. YouTube and Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. Instagram and an advisory committee meeting. These are all really good, thoughtful platforms to share your message. And of course, you can do more than that. We're just doing that to think about right now and just start thinking about how you would tailor those messages. So with that in mind, some of you have responded and thought about a couple of platforms. How might you change that message to tailor it for that platform? And so, for example, with Instagram, if your word was belonging, maybe you would share a few images and then a caption that would say, every story belongs here. But then if you were meeting with policy people, you might try to kind of change that message to say, we're here to ensure every family in our state feels they belong at the table when decisions are made. So you would definitely want to tailor your message for those platforms. So LinkedIn would keep it professional with few images or zero. Instagram would try to grab attention with a graphic. Any videos they share on social media are less than 30 seconds. It is challenging, I agree. But in those first 10 seconds, you want to capture someone's attention, and that's very hard to do. So these are great, and we'll kind of go to the next slide. I'll let you guys continue to think about that, but we want to share some real world examples of what it looks like to have the same core message, but change that for the different platforms. So we have an example of a newsletter, and then we'll have an example of a LinkedIn post. So in this example, the newsletter and the social media post are both promoting a learning event. The newsletter is lengthier and it's a description of the event and the organization. But on the right-hand side, we have everything kind of in more bullet point form. So it's sharing the highlights of what to expect at the event, just in a slightly different format. So we want to think about that with something that you might see. So let's say that your organization just launched a new family support group and you want to share that news, but how you say it should change depending on where it goes. So just like in this example, in a newsletter, that version might be warm and detailed, and it might speak directly to families because that's probably who is subscribed to your newsletter. And you want that to build trust and connection. But on LinkedIn, you'd probably shift the tone slightly so that it's more professional and more outcome focused. Because in LinkedIn, you're probably talking to funders, partners, and other organization leaders. So the main difference would be the tone and the word choice, the level of detail and emotion, and the audience you're trying to reach. The same thing would be the core value in the message and the intention. So finally, we're going to look at, is your message working, and how to evaluate your plan. So we'll break down a few simple things that you can look at, starting with our social media insights. So these are kind of, it might be a lot to look at if you've never looked in marketing before, but that's okay. So we're going to talk about reach, impressions, and engagement. So reach is the number of times people saw your content. Impressions is how many times your post was shown. And engagement is, are people liking, commenting, or clicking? And then some other metrics you can look at are event attendance, word of mouth. Are people kind of sharing with you, oh, I saw that in our group chat, or a friend told me about that. And then surveys, which is a great way to get feedback directly and help your audience feel seen, understood, and informed. The importance of looking at these things isn't to just look at analytics. It's about sharing your message more effectively, building trust, and avoiding wasting time because we don't have a lot of time. So it's really just seeing if your message landed, if you're getting a high reach on something, or if you have a lot of likes and reshares, then keep doing that because that's working. And if it's low or let's say you're not getting enough event attendance at something, then maybe you need to change your flyer and you need to look and tweak your messaging. So don't be afraid to switch something up. And with that, I'll pass it to Dr. Molly Lopez. Thank you.
Thank you, Tori. I'm going to wrap it up for us as we kind of round out our time together. So we've shared a lot of information with you all. So this is just kind of one last slide that helps us kind of pull some of this together. And it's around what do we know about what makes things persuasive, what helps make a message reach its audience. So a couple of tools we can suggest to you. One is you want to try to get your audience's attention, right? We kind of at a gut level know what helps that happen. New things we haven't seen before, things that are pretty, that are aesthetically pleasing, pictures, right? If you share something through social media without a picture, it's less likely to get noticed, to get seen. Requests to engage. So a message that asks people to comment, that asks people a question to respond to, those are more likely to gather attention. A second thing is about repeated exposure. So if I hear something once or twice, I'm not likely to remember it. But if I hear it 3 to 5 times, most people will remember it. And then as you go up from there, it's kind of a diminishing return. But if you are aiming for folks to hear a message 5 to 7 times, they're more likely to be able to retain that information. So once is not enough, we got to keep saying it. We talked a little bit about benefit and the importance of benefit. Also, it's important, it can be helpful to have your message endorsed by others with high status, right? So who's important to your audience and can they share your message for you? So for example, if I were wanting to share a message about how valuable my services to families were, I might ask a family, right, who's had experience with that service because they're going to be high status with other families, right? We talked a little bit about this, but messages that appeal to the values of your audience, the things that are important to them that get their heart, are more persuasive. And then the last thing to bring up is the idea of reciprocity. And what that means is if I offer a kindness to you as a part of sharing my message, you are more likely to hear that message and build that relationship with me. So in a marketing world, that might look like I'm offering you a free sample of a food that I have. But for us, that's probably less relevant. It might be more that I am trying to be helpful around a resource you need, or trying to offer a piece of information that I have that you might not have. So how can we offer kindness as a part of our sharing our message, which again helps build that trust, build that relationship, and will be more impactful. All right, so we have enjoyed spending time with you all today so much. We want you to leave with a thought and a charge to yourself. So think for a couple of minutes as we close out. What's one small change that I can make to connect better with my audience? What can I do to really strengthen that trust and relationship with my audience? And I'm going to pass it back.
Thank you, Molly. This has been great, everybody. I really, really want pawpaw, that fruit. I don't know where I'm going to find it, but I am going to be looking for it soon. Thank you so much. This, as a family-run organization and really involved in mental health and substance use, we oftentimes do not know how to promote our work, and this was quite helpful, so I appreciate it. So I hope this was an informative and helpful event. It was definitely fun. I want to thank the team again for today and thank everyone for your participation. As always, a special thanks to Dr. Linda Goggin, the principal investigator of NASDAQ and the National Federation of Families Executive Director. And of course, as always, the NASDAQ team for helping us run this event smoothly. As you exit the webinar, you'll be taken to a place where you can take your survey. And when you finish the survey, you'll pop up a participation certificate. So if you leave here, you'll be right taken to that survey. And once you fill it out and press send, I believe you should get your certificate. So in the next 3 to 5 business days, you'll find the link of our presentation and all the slides. And coming up next is our SAMHSA events. You can go to the next slide, where it's going to be June 20th, Monday. This is going to be a really good event. It's family-driven support for people with serious mental illness and serious emotional disturbance. Thank you for joining us today, and have a great, I know tomorrow's a holiday, so enjoy your day, and we'll see you next week on June 23rd. Bye-bye, everyone. I'll leave the Zoom up for a couple of minutes so you can exit on your own. If you exit on your own, you're taken to the survey a lot easier than trying to find the link or doing the QR code. And then you can get your certificate of participation.